Y'all, Bernie Sanders is out here getting money like Pablo Escobar. Okay, this man, what we are witnessing is something that is unprecedented. In case you have not heard the news yet, Bernie Sanders raised $18 million in his last quarter. Now, that number came from 1 million individual donors. 1 million, okay? 1 freaking million individual donors. I'm gonna express the significance of that in a second, but it's also important to know that by the time he finishes filing, because they can't even file all the money they're getting, but by the time he finishes filing this quarter, according to the Hill, they will have $30 million cash on hand, as in no debt, which is something that a lot of these other campaigns can't actually brag about, because some of them, they can raise 24 million in a quarter and then they're done. By the end of the quarter, they run through almost all their cash. Bernie Sanders is not having that problem. Look, Bernie Sanders has so much. He's doing so well in the fundraising conversation that he underperformed by Bernie standards in the debates. He underperformed. Some people would say he was a bit tepid. He was somewhat timid. That his message had been co-opted a lot, and they wished for him to reclaim that message. Reclaim the issues that made his platform so popular. And even though he underperformed, Bernie Sanders raised $2 million in 24 hours after the debate. This man is rolling in Pillsbury dough, and it is not even close. Now, in comparison, I wanted to show you some of what the other candidates raised, and I'm explaining to you why this is important. So, Pete Buttigieg raised $24.8 million from 294,000 people. Joe Biden raised $21.5 million this quarter from 256,000 people. Elizabeth Warren raised $19 million from 384,000 people. Bernie Sanders raised $18 million from 1 million people. And Kamala Harris raised $12 million from 279,000 people. Now, why is that significant? Well, as you probably heard, not even one of those descriptions of the other candidates' individual donors comes close to 1 million. And that's significant because everybody kind of remembers what was Bernie's old number that we still talk about today, an average of $27 per donor. But now it's different. It's an average of $18 this quarter. In other words, his numbers are actually getting lower, which means more people are donating. More people are donating, not necessarily, it sounds bad, but basically people who can't afford to donate a lot of money are still saying, look, no matter what, I have to figure out a way to continue this Sanders machine. I have to figure out a way to contribute if I can't contribute myself as a volunteer, which means the people who weren't able to receive his message last election because of the suppression from the mainstream, because of the suppression by the political pundits, the political influencers out there, because of the distortion about who he was and what he represented, and because of basically his policies at the time being unknown, and now everybody knowing exactly what his policies are, those people didn't know who Bernie was then. However, those same people, those same lower middle class to impoverished people know exactly who he is now, and they're putting their money where their mouth is. That's significant for Bernie. Now, I want to break this down to you and explain why, because you see the order that they put that in. They put Bernie fourth to last because he raised the fourth largest amount. But they should have ranked it 1 to 5 based off of individual donors, and here's why. See, in 2016, roughly 30 million people voted. Now, I know, a lot of voter suppression. A lot of people got their registration dropped, right? A lot of votes got thrown out. I know. I get it. That's a different discussion for a different day. But let's just say for the numbers we have right now, 30 million people voted. So if 30 more million people voted, 17 million of those people supposedly voted for Hillary Clinton, while 13 million of those people voted for Bernie Sanders. That's a problem for the establishment, because That's 13 million people voted for Bernie Sanders when he almost won the race after he started campaigning 5 months later than he began campaigning in this Democratic primary. That's without 1 million individual donors, not only in one quarter, but 2 separate quarters. That's 2 separate quarters of 1 million individual donors. Now, I'm sure eventually they've had 1 million volunteers. I can't verify that number, but I can say this. He didn't reach 1 million volunteers in the first 2 quarters of fundraising. I know that for a fact because people didn't know who he was. So he has over 1 million volunteers. And like I said, the last election, when he didn't even catch fire until later on, he had 13 million people that voted for him. He has 1 million volunteers right now. Whew, that's a problem for the establishment. Now, look. Without the $15 million, roughly, I believe it was $15 million, $16 million first quarter. Then he had an $18 million second quarter. This is insane. Do you understand that him having this amount of money this early allows him to build campaign offices in key primary states earlier than what he was able to do last time? Put staff in places to guide volunteers earlier than what he was able to do that last time. It allows him more flexibility because now he can travel from place to place with apparatuses set up for him where, hey, all I have to, like if Bernie wanted to go to South Carolina before, and yeah, he would speak at maybe a rally, but if he wanted to speak at a smaller venue or have a round table, maybe he could, maybe he couldn't, but it would depend on how good of a job the campaign did setting that up. But you couldn't always get staff early in states like Nevada. You couldn't always get staff early in states like Texas, in states like Georgia, where you were kind of unsure about how much name recognition you had there, let alone if anybody was going to want to work for you instead of Hillary. All that has changed. All the places where he couldn't get a campaign office set up early, especially in the quote unquote, what do you call it, the firewall of the South? That's all changed. He has campaign offices in all those states, to my understanding. And if he doesn't have campaign offices, he at least has staff there and or volunteers. All the places that Hillary Clinton was able to sneak votes away because of the media's collusion with her campaign and suppressing the Bernie Sanders campaign. The media is not calling this what it is. And I don't know how they are ignoring. I mean, I get it. I know what the media does. But I don't know how they're ignoring this legitimately without just cringing every single day. They ignore this fact. But like I said, they're not calling it what it is. This is the most legendary campaign in the history of the United States of America. What Bernie did in 2016 was already unprecedented when we're talking about the combination of individual donors, the come from behind and almost beating Hillary. And at the convention, he actually did beat Hillary, but we're not going to get into that discussion. But he did beat Hillary at the convention. But hey, let's say if we're just going to talk about the votes, the individual people voting. What he did in 2016 was already unprecedented. What he is doing in 2019 and 2020 is absolutely unheard of. And I dare you to try. Listen, Obama had a fantastic campaign. I don't really like him as a president, but you can't deny the campaign he ran. This is different. This is better than Obama's campaign. And it doesn't have any corporate donors. He is able to run a 35-40 state race right now and still have money in the excess because so many people have been galvanized into the movement that they're willing to volunteer rather than work. And there are people who, even if he doesn't have staff in that particular area or in that particular state, they're willing to foot the bill and the labor to make sure that his message gets heard in that particular area. We're seeing something we've never seen and they keep trying to look at the amount of money that was raised. The amount of money that is raised doesn't mean anything if it is not coming from the people who will be doing most of the voting, talking to their family at the dinner table, converting their friends, converting their family, converting their cats and dogs, okay? Converting their classmates, their co-workers. Those are the donations that matter. So you can attach whatever number you want to, but if Bernie had $1 million from 1 million people, that's still worth more than 18 million from 200,000 if you understand how politics works. Quantitatively, Bernie's doing something that should not be ignored, and yet and still it is being ignored. This also matters because this is something that is not often discussed, but it's important to remember. Now, with Bernie making this much money, doing as well as he's doing, very early on in the race, Bernie getting as much early momentum in states where other candidates don't really get a chance to, because Bernie raised a lot of money really fast. So he had a head start on a lot of people. Bernie has one benefit that the rest of the establishment has. Like I said, Hillary had 17 million people vote for her, quote unquote. Here's the problem with that. Those 17 million voters, and there'll probably be more now, but those 17 million voters are now split between the top 4 or 5 candidates amongst the establishment. And at least in the first 4 or 5 major primary races, or the 2 or 3 big, well, I'll say about 2 big primary days, the first 2, maybe the third one, understand those delegates will get split up. Now, they're not going to say early who they're handing those delegates off to if those votes do get split up. Obviously, they will not be handing them to Bernie, okay? But here's the important thing to remember. Bernie ain't splitting them with nobody, which probably means he's going to come out far ahead of every other establishment candidate while they're all splitting votes and people are firmly in their whatever camp, Kamala camp, Biden camp, Warren camp, Buttigieg camp. Now, why is that important? Because that momentum Bernie gets early will translate into areas like the second Super Tuesday, or the first Super Tuesday, excuse me. Yeah, Kamala will probably get out ahead a little bit in some areas from the rest of the establishment. But then you go to the next Super Tuesday, then Biden might get out ahead. And, from with the establishment. But they don't have a coalition of dedicated voters from both a Democratic and independent base. Bernie will have built up momentum very early on in the race. Very, very early on. At that point, he may be unstoppable because the next Super Tuesdays in the next big states are in Midwest. Not all of them, but a lot of them are Midwest open primary states where the independent voter will almost certainly dictate the outcome of those respective races. And at that point, the establishment will have no chance because of the momentum and the debates that would have taken place prior to that. That it's just going to all favor Bernie at that point in comparison to the establishment. They want to split the delegates up, but to be quite honest with you, if Bernie gets off to an early head start, there may be no chance for them to split the delegates up. But I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to get at least New York in their pocket, at least a lot of delegates from California, at least a lot of delegates from Michigan, in Minnesota, and at least a lot of delegates from the Southern Firewall. But look, they may not get a chance to. Now, Bernie, why does this look different in the polls then? Why isn't he the first? Let me be honest with you. He is a front runner. He is a front runner. And this is coming, in case y'all don't know, since your first time watching me, I've endorsed Tulsi, okay? Tulsi is my #1 candidate. But under no world am I disillusioned as to the status of Bernie Sanders. If you're paying attention, you shouldn't be either. Bernie is the front runner. The polls are lying. They're lying. I don't know how else to say that. They've lied before. They'll lie again. They're undermining Bernie Sanders' popularity, but we already know how this story ended in 2016 when they tried to play that game before the Iowa caucus. How'd that work out for everybody else? 12 or 15% chance of winning is what they said Bernie would have. Yeah. See how that's working out? Or you see how that worked out? In Michigan, they said he had even less of a chance of winning than in Iowa. Blew Hillary out the water. I want to say it was in Wisconsin, maybe. It was either Wisconsin or Colorado. He beat Hillary so bad, even though it's supposed to be neck and neck, that he took all the delegates. She didn't even get 15%. These things matter. We know a lot from the last election that will have an impact on this election. One of those things being that polling will lie on progressive candidates. If you believe, for example, that Inslee and Moulton are, and what's that man's name? And Tim Ryan are polling at the same level as Andrew Yang and Tulsi Gabbard, you lost your mind. They couldn't even get to the debate stage via individual donations, but we're supposed to believe. And Andrew Yang got to it before all of them with individual donations. Tulsi got to it as an independent candidate or as a down ticket candidate second, only Andrew Yang and Bernie. Bernie qualified early on from polling, but there's strictly people who are qualifying from the donors. Tulsi got to it before every other candidate except for Andrew Yang. I remember Julian Castro begging for money, but they are trying to say that those candidates are polling at the same level or better than Tulsi Gabbard or an Andrew Yang, which makes no legitimate sense. Especially when you combine it with the fact that social media can win you a campaign, and almost nobody else has more social media interactions than other than Bernie, Tulsi, and Andrew Yang. And actually, Tulsi, by a lot of metrics, actually has more. But they're saying these people are polling better than these two. So if that's the case, do you really believe that Bernie is getting beat by Kamala in one poll, Biden in another poll, despite the fact that he gets 2 million donations the next day after not a bad performance, but he underperformed by his standard? Look, Bernie's a problem. And the establishment, they know it. They know it. But it's interesting to see, it will be interesting to see how they're going to prepare for this. I don't think they have an answer. I think they're throwing shit at the wall at this point and seeing if it sticks. De Blasio, Kirsten Gillibrand, these are the ones who's going to stop Bernie from taking New York? Yeah, okay, good luck with that. Kamala can't even win over support in her own state. I don't think they have an answer for this test, y'all. Bernie might get it done. He might get it done. Thanks for watching that segment of Mi Casa es Su Casa. Make sure you follow us on Twitter, on Facebook, on Roku TV, and on JustNForm.com. Also, you can make sure that you're subscribed to the channel by going to the subscribe button, pressing it, and hitting that notification bell to get all of our notifications. And of course, you can help us reach our goal of 500 patrons on Patreon by supporting the show by donating as little as $1. You can click on the link in the description below for that. And remember, more than anything else, find your balance